I'm Lucy. I was born into a poor family, but a few months ago, I was able to marry a man named Scott. I thought that Scott was a kind gentleman who cared about his family, and that our future married life would be wonderful, but I never imagined at the time that it would end like this. My parents were irrelevant with the word rich. I believe that I was not as fortunate as my peers around me since childhood. However, looking back now, I realized that my parents worked very hard, put up with a lot, and took good care of me. I could not afford to be extravagant, but they gave me tasty food, and most importantly, they let me go to college. So that's why I've worked hard since I graduated from college and wanted to earn as much as possible. Perhaps I had developed a rebellious spirit, so to speak, without knowing it myself, to avoid a life of poverty. I found myself living beyond the age of 30 without a proper boyfriend, let alone marriage. I even think that an existence like mine is called a career woman. However, even I was able to meet someone through work and started dating that man. Scott, who is 3 years younger than me. I think Scott is a man who has a good heart and always cares about family. He was always talking about his parents and younger sister. At the same time, he also had a strong manly spirit. He never showed any weakness towards me, and he always led me on. When I was thinking that I could not let go of such a kind man, he proposed to me. Of course, I've no reason to refuse. I immediately accepted it, and I finally became a married woman. I'd worked hard and wondered if I had worked a little too hard. But with this result, I felt as if I was rewarded for my hard work. Now at that time, I did not yet realize that such a thought was wrong. After marrying Scott, we chose an apartment that was reasonable for us to rent as our new home. Even then, Scott said, "I'll pay the rent for now. Let's split only the utilities 50-50. I was also earning money, so I suggested that we split the rent and utilities 50-50. And first, Scott did not accept because of his pride, but I kept persuading him, and we agreed that all living expenses would be split 50-50. There were times I felt remorse, thinking I may have hurt his pride. But later, this decision turned out to be the right one. I began to realize this about a month after we got married and moved in together. When I came home from work, Scott, his parents, and his younger sister were there.
Hello, that's Lucy. Welcome home from work. Sorry to bother you visiting your home.
That's how I was welcomed by my mother-in-law, Cherry. And following that, my sister-in-law, Alicia, said, "I didn't know you came home so late from work. I don't want to work." She spelled as she looked at me. This scene is already shocking to me. The first thing I wanted to say was that Scott had not said anything about the in-laws coming here today, as Scott was chatting with his in-laws as if nothing had happened. I asked him, were they supposed to come?
Oh, it's important to talk to my family face to face on a regular basis. We've been apart for a while since we got married.
It was as if he was not feeling guilty at all. Next, in my mind, I was like, what? And begin with, it was only a month. I understand the importance of being in contact with family, but if he wanted to do so, he should have said something to me. The person he lives with, first. Moreover, the food on the table was quite lavish, although I don't know where they got it from. I can say that we couldn't have such a lavish meal as a daily dinner. You've quite a feast lined up here, I said unintentionally.
Of course it's a feast. My family is here. This much hospitality is normal. Don't worry, I'll keep some for you.
But that is not what I am concerned with. One thing that bothered me about Scott when we were dating, he seemed to be spending quite a lot of money for his in-laws. If it was seldom to serve a lavish meal like this, it wouldn't have been a big deal. However, he frequently bought expensive wines for his parents and cute brand name clothes for his sister since we were dating. But at that time, I thought it was an act of kindness towards his family and didn't ask him so much about it. I would deny that he said, "It's none of your business how I use the money I earned myself," but when you get married and see such a scene again with your own eyes, it starts to feel a little different. I understand he may be doing it within his salary, but I think we need to save some of our earnings for the future. What I really wanted to say here was that we shouldn't spend money on such unnecessary luxuries. However, since then, Scott has been inviting his parents to our house without my permission, and each time he prepares another lavish meal, and the other day, he gave his sister another expensive bag because it was her birthday. The in-laws also behaved as if the situation was normal. My parents-in-law say they have back injuries and seem to earn only little money. And although Scott's younger sister graduated from university, she still doesn't have a job. It was hard for me to understand why he was allowing them such languid and extravagant behaviors all the time. I know Scott's income, but I have a feeling that he's spending all of it. Still, Alicia is like, "Thanks for everything, big brother. Oh, by the way, I want this purse next time." And she shows a picture of an expensive wallet to Scott. And Scott lightly responded, "I see. Then that is for next month." Then comes Sherry, who's on the same wavelength as my father-in-law. Dean saying, "I'd like to go to the new French restaurant that is nearby." Then Scott replied, "That's interesting. Let's go there next month." And Dean is indeed laughing, saying, "You are the main person of our family, a man we can count on." And he's in a good mood. Knowing what Scott has done so far, I know that he will certainly do these things. I felt the way of his spending was wrong. I thought I needed to tell him. Then, one day, when Scott came home from work, I said to him, "Hey, let's spend our money a little more carefully. I want to save some money for the future." I said a little more forcefully. But on the contrary, Scott looks a bit pissed off, then said, "What? It's my income, so it's up to me how to spend it. I'm a businessman. I'm supposed to spend it when I earn it. If there's anything I want in the future, I can buy it at that time." He was yelling at me halfway through the conversation. I found myself stepping back a bit when I heard that. For a moment, I wondered if staying with this person was really good for me or not. But we've only been married a few months. I also felt that I needed to see what was going on a little more, so I apologized for what I had said to him at this point. But I have a feeling the way Scott's spending money is getting rougher day by day, and his in-laws treat him as if they worship him.
When my father-in-law, Dean said, "I am proud to have raised a son named Scott."
And my mother-in-law, Sherry said yes. Then she continued, "Lucy, you should be happy that you were able to marry such a wonderful man."
As if I was being nurtured by Scott.
And my sister-in-law. At least she said, "Hey, Lucy, you never buy me anything at all." Aren't you a little stingy? He said very rudely to me.
Scott was listening right in front of me. Then he said to Alicia, "Well, it can't be helped. Lucy relies on me for everything, and she cannot survive without me. Don't blame Lucy. I'll buy you all kinds of things you want." He was not on my side at all. For my part, I don't think that I am being nurtured by Scott even a bit. In reality, living expenses are split 50-50. I would like to say that loudly, but there is no single person here who is on my side, even if I said that. I have come to believe that Scott just loves his parents and sister too much to leave them, rather than truly caring about them. However, if I told them directly, probably they would just chalk it back, losing their temper. And I realized that I was mistaken, thinking he was leading me on. I was beginning to think that it was just a selfish thing with no compassion. I'm still a newlywed, and all I could do was worry about my future. Moreover, I would be told something completely unbelievable a few days later. It was when we were both eating dinner together after work.
Suddenly, Scott said to me, "By the way, Lucy, we're going on a trip to Hawaii all together, and our plan is to go shopping there. You should take a holiday. Of course you're coming too, right?"
That's what he told me. I could not believe it all. His meaning of everyone is, of course, the entire in-law family. It was Scott who would pay for everyone's travel and shopping expenses. There is absolutely no way for him to have that kind of money by any stretch of imagination. Hey, Scott, we don't have money.
We got that much money, so you can't do that.
I'm not going. I responded reflexively. But Scott responded, "You come on. There's plenty of money where there's money." He replied with something that made no sense to me at all. And Scott added to that, "My parents suggested this. If you want to refuse what I say, I'll give you a condition. I'll give the $80,000 which you've been secretly saving to my parents and my sister. If you don't like that, we're getting a divorce. Are you sure about you want to refuse?" He said with a grin. I was shocked, but also surprised because I have not told Scott that I have a savings of $80,000. It was strange and creepy how he knew that. But I do recall that I was so tired from work that I left my bag in the living room, then went into the shower room. And after I took a shower, I checked my bag. Then, I noticed some of my items' positions had changed inside my bag. I always put things in my bag in the same arrangement and felt uncomfortable when that was changed. But at that time, I thought it was just my imagination and did not pay attention to it. But maybe it was obvious that Scott may have seen the bank book in my bag. I'm sure he did. Your saving money is ours. That one is our sharing asset, right? We're a couple, so if you won't listen to me, you have no right to say how I spend that money. That's your punishment for being so petty and stingy without telling me. That's the way it is. And if you don't like it, I'll divorce you as much as you want. Scott is quite aggressive. I had no idea that I would be so vulnerable. But for me, if he can say that, now is a good time because I don't even want to be with him anymore.
Alright then, all yours.
Without finality, I placed the bank book and card in front of him.
Then you are free to have this. But please sign on this.
I presented another document, which were divorce papers to Scott. For what it's worth, I probably expected this to happen too. I was preparing to get divorced if anything happens.
How stubborn are you going to be? Yes, I'll sign it.
I guess Scott does not believe that I am serious about my intention to get a divorce. Immediately, he signed his name and threw it at me. I didn't expect things to go so smoothly, but as long as I have the divorce papers, I no use for this house anymore. The next day, I left our house, ready to move out immediately. Have a good trip. I finally told Scott and headed for my parents' house. Well, you can come back when you cool off. I'm going to spend this $80,000. You're a fool. If you'd listened to me, we could have had a fun-filled, luxurious time. Perhaps it was because Scott saw the $80,000 in my bank book that he told his parents about it and decided on this extravagant trip. I never thought my savings would be used this way. Of course it doesn't go as he planned. Instead, Scott and his family will be in pain, for immediately. I submitted the divorce papers and went straight to my parents' house. After that, I continued to work and live a particularly unchanged life, except that I was single again. I received many annoying messages from Scott, though. He sent me photos of them proudly purchasing various expensive items in Hawaii, paying by credit card, with a nuanced message as if to say, Lucy is really stupid for not being able to have this experience.
But about a month later, I received a phone call directly from Scott. Hey Lucy, where did that $80,000 go? It is not in the bank account.
Apparently, they had received what appeared to be a bill because they were unable to pay their card due to an insufficient balance. But I have to admit that I was dismayed at being told that now, because that $80,000 was not in the account of the bank book that was originally given to Scott. He did not check it beforehand and thought it was there. Of course there wouldn't be. That bank book was for you and me, to pay for our living expenses. I was just stating the fact, but Scott doesn't seem to understand what I meant.
Huh. I surely saw it, you know. I saw $80,000 in this bank book. Did you pull it out without permission? I won't allow it.
He was about to lose his temper on his own accord. I am totally too stunned to question his morals. If I had pulled it out, it would show up in the history. I said so, and decided to tell the whole story because I had no choice. Patron to begin with, the bank book that Scott took the liberty of looking at in my bag was my own old bank book. It just so happened that the bank book where Scott and I paid our living expenses was also the same bank. Scott accidentally saw my bank book, and since it contained $80,000, he must have mistakenly thought that I had saved during this marriage. But that $80,000 was money that I myself had saved before I started dating Scott. The purpose was to give back to my parents who had raised me so well. I was going to work hard and save up money to renovate my parents' house someday, so it was never an asset to be shared with Scott. That's all my money. When I explained this to him firmly, Scott suddenly became impatient.
Oh, wait a minute. Do you know how much we spent in Hawaii?
Regardless of what he said, I was the one who warned him. Generally, the salary from Scott is not enough to support even one person. In fact, I was paid many times more than Scott, and yet he spent lavishly for his in-laws. So if he shops a lot, automatically the debt comes back to himself. But I did ask him how much he had spent in Hawaii.
It's $25,000. There's no way I can pay this. Lissy, you have to do something.
I'm really surprised by this. How can he spend so much in such a short period? He was completely counting on my $80,000. Well, it can't be helped. You have to work to earn money, I said with a laugh.
Pay you? How can you say that when you're my wife? Don't forget that you've been able to make a living thanks to me.
And I was told, even over the phone, as if I was about to be scolded. But I said, once and for all, look, we've already filed for divorce, so we're not married. You are a stranger now. Don't say creepy things like I'm still your wife. After saying that, I continued, we split the rent and living expenses 50-50, right?
I split the rent and living expenses 50-50, right? I'm not being fed or taken care of by you, am I? I can live without you, right? You understand what this means, don't you? You should.
I told him sarcastically. If I had taken Scott's suggestion when we got married and had him pay the rent and other expenses, this is something I could not have said openly, if that had happened. I might have been in a weak position and could not have pushed him that far, but now that I could say it clearly like this, he could no longer say anything to me. There was no point in talking any longer, because immediately, I hung up and blocked the call from Scott. Then, according to rumor, Scott couldn't pay their bills and went into debt. Moreover, from now on, he will have to pay the rent and living expenses by himself for the apartment that we used to live together. Oh yeah, Scott's in-laws continue to take advantage of him, and the debt only seems to be growing. Banks will no longer lend him money, and if that happens, of course, he will not be able to pay his utility bills, etc. Then, the electricity and water will be shut off. To top it all off, he has a verbally abusive relationship with his in-laws now, who he had treated so well. You guys, come on! You've got to work hard. Don't rely on me all the time. The situation has become such that it seems to be killing them. After coming this far, his parents-in-law finally realized the gravity of the situation and began to work part-time to pay off Scott's living expenses and debts. On the other hand, I carried out the renovation of my parents' house as planned. Much of my parents' house, which used to be old, is now strong and beautiful. My parents are very happy, and I am very happy to be able to return the favor. I was also able to travel with my parents, which I had not been able to do before. And once again, I could create new memories with my family. I am now a divorcee, but I am enjoying my life with my parents,